Hi everyone, welcome to another comics packed edition of the Comic Obsessive. As usual, it hasn't changed yet, in spite of changing birthing laws, which seems to be happening in the news around us. But still Jason over here. I'm still Jason, and joining me is.
I'm Adam Pyle, but we're joined by a special guest today.
We are joined by Mr. Ed Brisson. Folks out there will know Ed for work in a variety of comics. I believe we're taking it way back with looking at some Ghost Riders. You'll also know him from the upcoming SilverHawks edition that he's exploring, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And this past year, you'll know him from Alpha Flight, and of course, the book that all the little kids love, great for ages 5 and below, Predator. We love Predator for the littles. That's
Perfect. Well, I love
that's a
that.
joke. Please don't give your 5-year-olds Predator. But I probably
I
saw the movie when I was like 7, so
yeah, I would say give it to them. It's fine.
hell yeah. Oh yeah. Well, we have a few questions to banter back with you and back and forth here. And the first one is kind of an origins question, and that is what got you into comics in the first place?
Like, got me interested or got me working in comics.
I would like to hear what got you interested in comics.
What got me interested in comics originally was just I was a pretty big reader from a pretty early age. Uh, my mom was a big reader as well, and I first and timeline wise, I'm not sure which came first, but like I think I came across comics like a lot of kids in the 80s, and that like I was I had some health issues when I was younger, so I was in the hospital a few times, and it was, I think, mandatory that if you were in the hospital that you were given a stack of comic books to just kind of keep you in your bed and keep you from getting up and disturbing everyone. So that's, I remember reading stacks and stacks of comics when I was in the hospital on, three or four different occasions. But the other where I was actively pursuing comics was my mom used to go to a used bookstore every week in our town, and we got a $2 a week allowance, and uh, she's one of those people that can spend about 2 hours in a bookstore just trying to find the right thing. And so she would plunk us in front of the at the very front door of the store. They had shelves of books, but beneath it there was probably about four or five short boxes, maybe long boxes, I can't recall, of 10-cent comics. And so I would usually blow my allowance every week, picking up 20 comics that I would read over the course of the week, and then uh, do that once a week. I would try and bring them back and trade them as well. But that's where my first real interest in reading comic books came from. And it's hard for me to think of a time in my life where I wasn't reading comics. I feel like I was kind of always reading them. I remember, like those times in the hospital, I was probably like five, six, seven. I remember being on a big family trip when I was about six, uh, and being in the back seat of the car, stuck in like were we driving back then? It might have been our 81 B, Volkswagen Rabbit. No. Anyway, whatever it was, it didn't have air conditioning. And we would drive across Canada in the summer. And me, my brother and sister, who didn't get along at the best of times, were like stuck in the back seat. And my parents would try and find ways to stop us from just beating the crap out of each other in the back seat. And for me, it was comic books. I remember reading a lot of comic book stuff, uh, when I was pretty young, and all out of order. Like, I think I had like two parts or one or two parts of the Dark Phoenix saga, and I just had to kind of figure out how the rest of it went. But yeah, there's not a time I don't remember reading comics, but the time in the bookstore was when I was sort of actively sort of figuring out what books it was that I liked, and starting to collect particular titles or follow particular characters.
It seems like that was kind of just the way of the world back then with like collecting comics. You got this piece of the story and that piece, and you really just kind of had to infer what happened or read the little little footnotes about like who appeared in what issue and like try to cobble the story together from letter pages and things like that. do you have like a standout title? Because I know that in your Iron Fist series, you said that he was like a bucket list character for you. Do you have any like standouts from that day and age of like, finding the random comics?
Uh, the first characters I kind of remember being obsessed with at that age. The very first one for me was Peter Porker's Spider-Ham. I was really big into that when I was quite young. But from there, it was Batman, Spider-Man, Daredevil, Punisher were the four, and Wolverine. So I was really into the X-Men and anything involving Wolverine. And so those are kind of like constants for me throughout my life. I remember being really into the early Manhunter stuff from the 80s, and I think it was pretty short-lived, but there was a series called The Ray that was a DC comic that I was really into back then as well.
Mhm.
Um, so those are all the standout ones for me from that era.
I do
And
remember the Ray. Absolutely.
good stuff. One of your credits is as a letterer. Is that correct?
That's more than one, yeah, for sure. I've lettered a ton of stuff.
Can you talk a little bit about that? About your experience as a letterer?
Yeah, for sure. So I self-published comics for a long time. And throughout that period, like I drew my own stuff, I wrote my own stuff, I colored it, I lettered it.
Wow.
Um, and I was sort of like self-publishing. And then in the early 2000s, I went for my third go through with university, because I had kind of gone twice before. I did fine arts for a little bit. I never completed. And then I just did about 2.5 years of just taking anything that I was interested in, and then stopped. And then I went back and took the program was called Publishing Techniques and Technology. So it was a publishing program to learn how to sort of the pre-production and the production angle of magazines and books and any sort of periodical. And I remember at the time having this idea that I could get a job with a printer and then maybe print my comics after hours on the press or so. Like I don't know what it was, but through that program, we did a lot of pre-press, and that involved like Photoshop, which I was already familiar with photography work. Um, we did Quark Express, which was the industry standard back then. Now it's InDesign and Illustrator. Which being familiar with Photoshop and then going to Illustrator is a really frustrating process because they look the same, but they work very differently. Um, but through learning Illustrator in the whole pre-production portion of that program, uh, I was easy. It was I was easily able to sort of transition over to doing like comic book lettering and comic book pre-production because a lot of lettering now it's all done in Illustrator. Primarily done in Illustrator, but it involves a bit more pre-production work, I think, than it has historically. Um, so having that sort of experience with Illustrator under my belt, I was able to sort of just like pick up lettering gigs here and there. I started out lettering manga. I was doing a lot of manga lettering where we would clean out all the Japanese and replace it with English, including sound effects, which was a pretty grueling work because the sound effects often are part of the art. So you'd have to remove the Japanese, replace it with English, and then repair the artwork wherever you couldn't make a match up. Which, given all the half toning patterns, so like that they use in manga, it was actually really difficult to kind of match up
Yeah.
the thing without it looking like a patchwork job. And then I started getting work with I started manga first, and I did that from 2006 is when I started there. And about 2008, I picked up a job lettering a Avril Lavigne graphic novel that came out through Random House. Um, and then slowly transition. I was doing a lot of image stuff. I was doing some stuff for Oni. I did a little bit of stuff for Dark Horse. Um, but yeah, I primarily did that for, I think like I quit my day job in 2011. I'd started lettering in 2006, and I was still lettering stuff up until 2017. So I was writing stuff at Marvel, but still lettering a bunch of manga for Viz at the same time. But I did under a studio name, so it's like kind of hard for people to seek out because it's not going to have my name on it. I had a NRP Studios is what I used. Um, so yeah, I was doing that for 11 years, I guess. I did lettering, but then I did letter something for Marvel with the Alpha Flight one shot that we did because when that was being put together, we had gone to the editorial department and said like it would be really cool if everybody on the creative team was Canadian, right? From like writer, artist, colorist to letterer. And I guess Marvel didn't have any Canadian letterers. So I sort of like briefly came out of lettering retirement to letter that book so that we could keep the entire thing Canadian.
That's nice. Your work usually goes to darker places. That's it's kind of a trend. You have Ghostwriter, for example. Is that where your interests are? Is that something that just more or less happens?
I think that's primarily where my interests are. I like growing up, aside from comic books, I was a massive fan of both horror films
Mhm.
and crime fiction and in any form, like crime fiction novels, crime film, whatever else. So that's kind of like my predilection. I'm always uh, telling darker stories, and I'm not like it's weird because it's very different from who I am as a person. Like I'm not a particularly dark person, but that's just the kind of stuff that interests me in terms of writing and in terms of things that I enjoy watching or reading or whatever.
Yeah, I was reading your Iron Fist, and it kind of took that horror turn. I think in the second issue with the rat thing,
Right, yeah.
the and I was like, well, there's that darkness again. But I mean, yeah, it's very enjoyable. You do it very well.
Thanks, man. And I think like it kind of fits. Like there's a nice there's sort of a history of like kind of horror kung fu stuff, and I think it fit well within the Iron Fist world. It didn't seem like it was out of place, or at least I hope it didn't think it was out of place.
Not at all. I thought it fit in very well. So we know you have a big book on the horizon, right? Coming up.
True.
Is it this week? I think it's this coming week, isn't it? Or is it next week?
Yeah, next Wednesday. I've lost track of time completely. So what are we today? It's
26th.
26. So yeah, we're the 29th, I believe it comes out. Yeah. Wednesday, January 29th. It's SilverHawks, the first time we've had any SilverHawks anything in nearly 4 decades. So pretty excited about that. I'm a big SilverHawks fan from back in the day. I kind of lobbied to have this book to be the one writing it if they were going to put it out. So it's a very nerve-wracking week for me, I think, to see how people enjoy it. But I hope that they do enjoy as much as I enjoyed working on it. But I guess we'll see on Wednesday.
Well, how do you approach something like that? Because it's so like steeped in nostalgia for so many people. Like I think so many people are going to pick that up just out of curiosity. And so how do you
Right.
balance that nostalgia with a new direction, new and fresh take?
So I think the one like the wrong approach would be to just try and scratch that nostalgia itch for people and just live in that world, right? And not update it and not do anything fresh because it's been 40 years, nearly 38 years, I think, since it was on the air. Uh, and so for me, my thought process is always like nostalgia is like the thing that's going to get you through the door,
Mhm.
and hopefully, a good story, new developments will be the thing to kind of keep you there. Um, for us, the one thing I think that is this sort of a bonus is, or a thing that interests me is that the show, it's very much an adventure of the week. It kind of almost reset every week, right? Reset, and there wasn't really a lot of plot threads that continued throughout it. we didn't really get much detail on who each of the characters were, right? In fact, like throughout the entire series, we don't know what Bluegrass's name actually is. It's never mentioned, right? Same with Hot Wing, which is very much a thing of the time where like it's like code names only. It's because they're just the Silverhawk. We don't get much on their backstory. We don't get much on who they are as sort of people. We get who they are in action and how they handle the thing. So I think, to my mind, that opens us up to a lot of potential story. We have the ability now to go back and sort of fill people in on who these people actually are. We can round them out a little bit more, make them more three-dimensional, give them some motivations that go beyond just like conquering the bad guy every week. They have individual lives and personalities and things that brought them to the place that they are. With the comic book, we kind of using the starting place of the cartoon is sort of our same starting place as a loose blueprint. So it starts with Monstar breaking out of prison after having been incarcerated for 100 plus years. We do the same. But in the cartoon, they put together the team. The first episode, there's like a 30-second scene or a 2-minute scene or whatever, where we meet all the Silverhawks for the first time, and then they're off to training, and then they're off to fight. And instead of doing that, we've gone back and we're showing who these people each were before they joined the Silverhawks. So we're seeing Quicksilver, on his job with the Interplanetary Force 8, as a leader. We're showing Bluegrass who he was before. Same with Hot Wing, who we're bringing in. He came in later in this series, Hot Wing. We're bringing him in with our very early on. But we see the two of them in their lives beforehand. Same with Copper Kid, Steel Will, Steelheart. Uh, we wanted to show that there's a reason why each of these persons sort of would give their life over to this program and have their bodies augmented in the way that they do. We wanted to show how each of them have been impacted by Monstar, either directly or indirectly, that kind of brought them to this place. So I think that's the thing. Like we can bring you in with that nostalgia. You remember it, you loved the show from 40 years ago, but hopefully we're bringing enough new stuff for the people who loved it that they're going to stick around, and people who are just discovering this for the first time. Hopefully we're building an interesting enough world that they're going to stick around and discover the Silverhawks and become Silverhawks fans, and maybe they go back and seek out the old cartoon or watch the old cartoon or whatever. But hopefully we're just kind of dragging it out for a new generation and hoping that we get some staying power.
And it sounds like this was part of your childhood nostalgia as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was,
Mhm.
I was a latchkey kid back in the 80s. And I was one of those kids who'd come home directly from school. My mom's not home for like 3, 4 hours. So I'm parked in front of the TV watching, like it was like, if I remember correctly, it was like Transformers, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Silverhawks, whatever. And then I'm trying to remember the show that came on that was like the indicator that cartoons were over. Because I know on the weekends MASH would come on, and that
Mhm.
meant that your Saturday morning cartoons were over, which I still have like a Pavlovian response to the MASH theme song anytime it comes on. But yeah, I was one of those kids just constantly parked in front of the TV watching this stuff.
What do you think is maybe like the big push behind all this nostalgia that seems to be so, I don't know, there's just such a big push for nostalgia themed things in pop culture now. We got the Thundercats now, He-Man's got a cartoon, and just all this nostalgia really, I don't know, in the last 5, 10 years maybe, it seems like it's more nostalgia than ever before.
I feel like we've always had this, like it feels like that, but like if you look back at like the 90s, there was like nostalgia for 30 years prior, right? There was a lot of like Addams Family stuff, like the Batman, like when the Batman movies came out, it was kind of like I don't know how many people remember it, but at that time, that was late 80s, the Adam West stuff was in really heavy rotation in reruns. And there was like a kind of an appreciation for it. So I feel like we just go through these cycles where nostalgia pops back up. And I don't know if it's like the people who are sort of just driving the bus, who are in charge of these entertainment corporations, just happen to be at a certain age where they're like, I want to bring back the stuff I loved. Uh, I honestly don't know what it is. It could just be like in terms of comics. I feel like your average comic reader is getting a little bit older, and I feel like for a lot of us, this is kind of the stuff that we grew up with, and we want to see it like we want to see it sort of like brought out and polished off and given another life. We like there's the stuff that we love, and there's that hope that you can somehow, I think, recapture that stuff that you lived as a child. I'm sure there's much deeper, maybe darker sort of rationale for why nostalgia is so prevalent right now, versus where we are as a society or what a lot of people are going through, that maybe we just need the comforts. That's maybe something that I don't have the brain power at the moment to process, but very much could be that. But I think it's just we're all kind of people of a certain age that have these fond memories and just want to recapture that a little bit.
Yeah. Speaking of nostalgia and characters that have been around for a long time, curious about how you approach such established characters like Spider-Man, like Ghost Rider, and kind of go about finding new ways to tell stories about them. And I'll also put a PS in here that I'm hoping we get a somebody from Marvel versus Predator story from you in the near future as well. I would love to read
Sure.
more Predator from you of any shade or variety, actually.
I'd love to continue with Predator. I don't know currently what Marvel's plans with it are. Uh, for me, I tend to like Ghost Rider. I was huge into the that 90s Ghost Rider where we got Danny Ketch and everything. I was a really big fan of that. And then later, I really loved the Jason Aaron Ghost Rider run. Uh, Iron Fist, same thing. I grew up with Iron Fist. I talk about it in the comics a little bit, but my dad taught karate, and sometimes on the weekends that we would spend with him, uh, I'd have to just sit in a dojo on Saturday mornings while he taught karate and read comic books. So there's this tie there for me, and I know uh, Iron Fist is not karate as kung fu, but it's still same like with the martial arts. Uh, there's a there's a bit of there's a bit of something there for me. But I tend to, when I'm writing a comic, I tend to go back and reread as much of the old stuff as I can, and just kind of absorb it. And what I'm often looking for is some sort of thread that I can pull on, something that was in the past that I can kind of like play around with in a more modern setting and sort of build on it. I like the idea of building on lore. I don't like the idea. I'm not a writer who's going to come in and sort of scrap lore. I like that it's there. Sometimes it's really difficult to make sense of because there's been so many iterations of it.
All right.
But there's a certain amount of fun of trying to make things make sense and build on things that have already been established. So that's usually where my mindset is when I'm going in. I don't always have like an agenda going into writing a book or anything like that. I like to sort of absorb and then see what sort of organically develops and then start working with these ideas and building upon that.
Well, we've read some of your Iron Fist and your Predator, and we know you've worked on Spider-Man, and now you're working on SilverHawks. And it sounds like you have such a wealth of knowledge of comics from the past. Are there more characters that you would, love to work on from any company, or is there something you would want to do again for your own self, creator owned or
In terms of like company characters, I never, one day I'd love to have a proper crack at Daredevil. Spider-Man was one of the big books for me growing up, and I wrote for Spider-Man I only co-wrote a few issues, I think 5 or 6 issues with Nick Spencer.
right?
But that was like me mostly kind of tagging along with something he'd already planned. Uh, that's a character I'd love to do one day. My big sort of the big one for me that is big for no one else is Speedball. I'm a huge Speedball fan. I have this like Speedball series that I've planned out that I would love to do at some point. But he's a tough sell for obvious reasons. But I think there's stuff there, and there are reasons like why he's a tough sell that I think if you can really extrapolate and explore those reasons, that could make a really interesting sort of character driven book. So that's one I would really love to do. Obviously, I haven't done any Batman proper. That would be amazing. Red Hood is another character I like a lot. Um, but there's probably I could sit here and list about 3 million characters if I really thought about it. But I've been trying to find that balance between that and then just getting back to doing creator owned. I really miss doing creator owned work, and I have in the years that I've been doing work for hire, this sort of stack of projects I've been wanting to work on in the creator owned realm have built up, and so I'm trying to slowly make my way through this pile of stuff I want to do.
I got to pick your brain about Daredevil there for a second because there's kind of two iterations of the character. There's like a very grim and gritty and dark storytelling surrounding him, and then there's like the more swashbuckling type character that maybe Mark Wade I think used in his runs. Really, the
Mhm.
like there was some darkness there, but there was a whole lot of fun too. Where would you put your character?
I tend to be a bit more on the former, just my own predilections. That's just the way I tend to lean. Um, I there is some fun stuff there around like his faith and his like the Catholic guilt and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I grew up going to Catholic school where I grew up in Ontario, in Canada, Oshawa, Ontario. And in Ontario, our Catholic schools are we have public schools and we have Catholic schools, and they're both like they're both government funded. So it's not like I think a lot of places Catholic schools are private schools, which is not the case in Ontario. So it was a public school that was Catholic. We had priests and we had nuns, etc. And I have feelings about that, that I have like a lot of sort of stuff from that time in my life that would be great to kind of work out through a character like Matt Murdock.
And that's were you a fan of the Charlie Cox Netflix, and then maybe the upcoming Marvel Charlie Cox? I mean, we haven't seen it
Yeah,
yet.
so I did watch it. I enjoyed it. For some reason, I put it off for a while, and then I think I was sick or something. There's something going on where I watched the entire 2 seasons, I think in like 2 or 3 days, because I was kind of stuck on the couch. But I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm looking forward to the new one. I'm trying to like temper my expectations, but hopefully it's good.
Very nice.
Well, I know we have SilverHawks coming this week. Very excited about that, and I know that people can find it in local comic shops. Any particular places online, in person, or anything like that that you'd like to mention before we close our chat with you?
Places where they can find the book or they find me.
Yes, the book and maybe some more information about you and what you've worked on, if there are particular spots that you like to share about.
Um, I mean, you can pretty much find it anywhere that comic books are sold. If you're local-ish, I am doing a signing at the beginning of March. I have another book coming out called Thundercats Lost that
Mhm.
comes out early March. So I'll be doing a signing. It's a SilverHawks Thundercat signing at Cape and Cal Comics, which is here in well, I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Cape and Cal is in Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia, which is just close by. But yeah, hopefully you can find the comic just about anywhere. It's I think Dynamite's been doing a pretty incredible job of really getting out there and promoting it. So hopefully your comic shop has it. Always support your local comic shop. Grab 2 copies, grab 5 copies, keep us going forever.
Mhm.
And in terms of finding me, I'm on Twitter, just at Ed Brisson. I'm at Blue Sky, which is at Ed Brisson bsky.social, I think. You can find me on Instagram, but it's really just photos of my cat and whatever records I'm listening to that day. And I think there I'm at Ed underscore Brisson. Someone got in there like 6 days before me, and it's only posted once. Um, and then I have a website, which is edbrisson.com, which is where I'll post any sort of upcoming conventions or signings. I have a newsletter you can subscribe to there that is sort of sitting in a drawer, kind of. I need to dust it off and get it up and going again, but I should have a newsletter going out in the next couple of weeks.
Do you go to many conventions? Do you do signings a lot?
I used to, um, but since the pandemic, I kind of don't do as many. Just because I don't know, like we just everything stopped, and I kind of like realized I've been the pandemic was we started 2020, and at that point for 16 years I'd been going to like 5 or 6 cons a year, if not more. Some years upwards of 15, and I realized I kind of just like staying at home. Part of it is I've cut back because my daughter is 18. She's in university, so who knows how much she lives at home, but who knows how much longer she'll be living here. So, I'd rather take the time and spend it with family. So I've cut back to about maybe 2 or 3 shows a year, uh, for now anyway.
Well, we really do appreciate your time today.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah. Jason, is there anything else?
I don't think so. If all hearts and minds are clear, I think we've covered some good ground, and we usually close by saying we hope everybody out there stays obsessive about SilverHawks and Thundercats and 80s nostalgia and all the things that are worth being obsessed about.
Agreed.